She walked into the room alone. Stacks of cash, diamonds, no witnesses. What happened next left her wealthy boss speechless. The safe door was wide open. Stacks of cash banded in $10,000 bundles sat untouched. A diamond-studded watch gleamed beneath the morning light pouring in through the plantation shutters. The study was still, almost too still. Gregory Bellamy hadn't told a soul. Not his assistant, not his lawyer, not even Carla, the woman he'd been dating casually for the last 4 months. Only he knew what he'd done that morning at 6:45 a.m. in his Dallas home. He'd left his most private room wide open, his most expensive belongings exposed. He didn't do it by accident. He did it to see if she would take the bait. Delilah Moore, the woman who had been working in his home for almost 6 years, the woman who knew the floor plans better than most architects, the woman who never touched anything she didn't have to, who didn't gossip, didn't ask for advances, and never once showed up late, not even when a tornado warning had shut down half the city. But trust, Gregory had learned, was a fragile thing. He sat in the guest room with a mug of black coffee, watching the hallway camera feed on his laptop. He turned off the sound. He didn't need to hear. All he wanted was to see. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. The footage just showed the hallway, light filtering in from the front of the house, dust floating lazily in the air. Then, at 7:13 a.m., she appeared. Delilah walked into frame wearing her usual light blue uniform. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, a soft gray headband holding back the flyaways. She had a small basket of cleaning supplies hooked on her arm. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't slow. She was just doing her job. Gregory's finger hovered over the spacebar to pause the feed, but he didn't press it. He wanted to see what she'd do without interruption. Because here was the thing. People had been planting little doubts in his ear for months. "You trust her around all that stuff?" His business partner Clayton had asked once at a bourbon tasting. "She's real polite." "Yeah, but don't let that fool you," Carla had said just a few weeks ago when she saw Delilah polishing silver in the dining room. Even his sister had made a snide comment. "Not everybody's honest just because they've been with you a long time, Greg." The whispers had built a quiet kind of suspicion. Not loud enough to accuse her of anything, but just loud enough to start watching, just loud enough to justify this test. And now the moment had arrived. Delilah walked up to the study door. It was cracked open just enough for her to see inside. She paused just for a second, and then stepped in. Gregory leaned in, narrowing his eyes at the screen. The camera didn't capture inside the room, just the hallway and part of the study entrance. But her body language, her pace, everything would tell him something. He waited, watching the seconds tick by. She stayed inside longer than he expected, maybe 3-4 minutes, but before he could draw any conclusions, she reappeared. Gregory sat still, his eyes fixed on the screen. Delilah was walking back down the hallway now, calm, collected, no rush in her step, nothing in her hands. He scratched his chin. To know why this moment mattered so much, you'd have to know who Delilah Moore was, and more importantly, who Gregory thought she was. Delilah had come into his life, not through an agency or some online service, but by word of mouth. Back in 2018, his former driver had referred her. "She's good people," the man had said. "Quiet, honest, works hard, doesn't take shortcuts." And she was all of that. From the first day, Delilah had carried herself with a quiet kind of self-respect that stood out. She never called Gregory sir, just Mr. Bellamy, and always with a kind but distant smile. She didn't overtalk. She didn't complain. She just showed up and did the job right. By the second year, Gregory trusted her with keys to the house, security codes, even alarm overrides when he was out of town. It wasn't even something he thought twice about. But somewhere around year 4, the voices started creeping in. It wasn't that Delilah ever did anything wrong. She didn't, not once. But his world was full of men and women who had worked too hard to trust too easily. Gregory's circles weren't exactly warm. The men he dined with in steakhouses off McKenna Avenue didn't grow up with maids or housekeepers they knew by name. They hired help. People rotated in and out. There was always a cousin, a friend of a friend, someone looking for work, but no one stayed too long. So when Gregory mentioned casually over scotch that his housekeeper had been with him for 5 years and had full access to the house, the eyebrows raised. You leave cash around. You got any jewelry in the open? You know her background? It started there, and it chipped away slowly at something he didn't even realize was soft. His sense of certainty. His pride in trusting someone who didn't look the part, as one of his colleagues had put it. She's nice and all, but don't forget people do desperate things sometimes. Gregory never liked the way that sounded, but he also didn't push back. Instead, he started locking the drawers more carefully, started keeping the study door closed every night, started watching how much he left out, all without saying a word. Still, Delilah remained the same, always early, always polite, always asking if she could restock supplies before they ran low. There was one afternoon, maybe 2 years ago, when Gregory walked in to find her quietly humming to herself while ironing his dress shirts. Something about it made him pause. She looked peaceful, focused, like she took pride in her work, even if no one would ever see that particular shirt outside his closet. He'd never told her, but in that moment, he felt something close to guilt. Maybe that's why this test weighed on him more than he expected. Because somewhere deep down, he knew this wasn't about her. It was about him, about what he'd let other people's doubts do to his thinking. But it was already in motion. The camera was rolling. The safe had been left wide open, and all he could do now was wait for the next clue. But the real surprise wasn't just what she did. It was how she did it. Gregory hadn't blinked in over a minute. He watched the hallway feed with the same intensity a man might have watching a game-winning free throw. Except this wasn't a game. This was his house, his money, his choice to trust or not to. The clock in the corner of the footage read 7:13 a.m. Delilah had stepped into the study exactly 28 seconds ago. The camera didn't show the inside of the room, but Gregory knew what was visible from the door. The open safe, the diamond PC Philippe watch, a few gold coins in a velvet pouch, and the cash. Almost $120,000 total. It wasn't exactly discreet. The hallway remained still. Gregory tapped his fingers on the edge of the laptop. The silence in the room around him started to feel louder than the footage itself. His mind jumped to a memory, a dinner 3 weeks ago at Ocean Prime. Clayton had brought a friend from Austin who worked in private security. Halfway through the meal, Gregory mentioned Delilah. Clayton's friend had leaned in and said, "I don't care how long she's been there. Anybody will steal if the opportunity feels safe enough." At the time, Gregory had nodded, half listening. Now those words echoed. Was this that moment? Back on the screen, Delilah still hadn't re-emerged. He leaned closer, tapping the right arrow key to jump the footage forward. 10 seconds, 20, then another 30. Then finally, at 7:17 a.m., Delilah stepped back into frame, her expression neutral, not blank, not nervous, just normal. She closed the study door behind her, without even glancing down the hallway, walked to the supply basket she'd left on the floor, picked it up, kept moving. If Gregory had never seen the footage, he wouldn't have known anything unusual had happened, but he had seen it, and it gnawed at him. Something about her body language, it wasn't what he expected. She didn't look startled or tempted. She didn't linger like someone calculating risk. She was just Delilah. He hit play again, fast-forwarding to 7:35 a.m. Another camera, this one in the kitchen, showed her washing fruit, apples, maybe, then folding towels, then checking her phone briefly. Likely for a grocery list. Nothing out of place, not a twitch, not a second glance at the camera. Gregory closed the laptop. Still, one question pulled at him. What exactly had she done in that room? Downstairs, Delilah was wiping down the coffee table in the living room when she paused. Her eyes drifted toward the staircase. She didn't hear anything, but she sensed something was off. She walked quietly toward the study again. The door was now completely closed, just like she'd left it. She stepped in just to make sure nothing had moved. The safe wide open, cash still there, watch still there. She stared at it for a moment, not in shock or confusion, but with a tired kind of awareness. Then she walked to the edge of the desk, pulled a sticky note from the drawer, and scribbled 4 short lines. Forgot to close this. Took nothing. Locked it. D. She gently closed the safe door, turned the dial, clicked the lock into place, and left the note resting right on top. No drama. No second thoughts. She didn't call Gregory. Didn't leave a voicemail. She didn't even mention it in the kitchen when he came down for a glass of water later that morning. She just carried on because in her mind she wasn't proving anything. She was doing what she'd do any day of the week. But upstairs, Gregory was about to realize that what she didn't say said everything. Gregory stared at the safe. The sticky note sat right on top, square and perfectly centered, like she'd placed it there on purpose. 4 lines, just 4. No accusation, no panic, no dramatic wording. Just a simple, clear message that read like someone pointing out the weather. Forgot to close this. Took nothing. Locked it. D. He didn't touch it right away. Instead, he stood there for a good 10 seconds, taking it in. The way the handwriting slanted slightly to the right. The way she signed it with just the initial, like she didn't want to make a thing out of it. But it was a thing. A big one. Gregory slowly bent down, turned the dial on the safe and confirmed it was locked. He entered the code, opened it, and looked inside. Everything was exactly where he'd left it. The cash untouched, the coins stacked, the watch sitting in the same position on the velvet square. He let out a long breath through his nose, and then he felt it. Not relief, not pride, shame. It crept in quietly but fully, wrapping around his chest like someone had cinched a belt a little too tight. He'd set a trap, a silent accusation, and she responded not with anger, not with some performance, but with respect, with care. She hadn't even told him about it. Gregory reached for his phone and opened the hallway camera footage again. This time, he rewound back to the exact moment she stepped into the study. He zoomed in, watched her enter, saw her pause. She looked down at the open safe, then back toward the door. She stood still for maybe 5 seconds, calculating something, not about stealing, about what to do next. Then she crossed the room slowly, almost deliberately, shut the safe, turned the dial, and went over to the drawer. She pulled out the sticky note, wrote her message, and left it. She didn't rush, she didn't look at the camera. He doubted she even knew one was there. It wasn't a performance, it was principle. Gregory rubbed his temples and sat down on the edge of the armchair near the window. The house was quiet except for the full sound of the dishwasher downstairs. His mind wandered back to a time maybe 3 years ago when he'd come back from the hospital after his gallbladder surgery. He was foggy from meds, hungry and frustrated. Carla hadn't come by. None of his friends had even texted. But Delilah, she left a casserole in the fridge with a note that said, "Heat for 25 minutes. Don't eat it cold, you'll hate it." He never said thank you. He also never wondered what made her care enough to do it. Until now. Downstairs, Delilah was wiping down the last section of the granite countertop when she heard footsteps. Not the slow kind, not the lazy, just walking through the house kind. No purposeful steps, coming down quick. She straightened up just as Gregory appeared in the kitchen, still wearing his white t-shirt and jogging pants from earlier. The laptop was tucked under his arm. He looked like he hadn't slept well. She turned toward him, her face calm. "Morning, Mr. Bellamy," she said. He stood there a second too long before speaking. Then finally he cleared his throat. "Dila, I saw the note." She nodded once. "Just wanted to make sure it was locked. Thought maybe you forgot." "I didn't forget," he said, his voice low. She didn't say anything, just tilted her head slightly like she already knew. "I left it open," he added. "On purpose." Still, she didn't flinch. "I was testing you," he admitted, eyes fixed on the marble floor tiles. Silence hung between them for a long 5 seconds. "Finally," she said. "I figured." Gregory looked up. "I wasn't sure," she added, "but it crossed my mind." He stepped forward, setting the laptop on the counter. "I feel like a complete fool," he said. Delilah gave him the softest smile he'd seen in years. Not a fool, just a man listening to the wrong people. He let that sink in. But what she said next, that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Gregory hadn't moved. Delilah was rinsing out a rag in the sink while he stood there at the counter, staring down at nothing in particular. His lips were pressed tight, his jaw flexing without him realizing. Everything he'd been told, All the little jabs from friends and colleagues suddenly felt loud and pathetic in his head. He finally asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" Delilah wrung out the rag and folded it neatly over the edge of the sink. "Didn't think it needed saying. You left it open. I closed it, simple." "But I was testing you," he repeated. "I know," she said gently, "but I'm not the one who needed the test." That hit like a slap dressed in silk. Gregory's face flushed, not from anger, just the weight of being called out without an ounce of disrespect. "You ever taken anything from me?" he asked. It came out sounding harsher than he meant it to. She turned to face him fully now. "No," she said, looking him right in the eye. "Not a dollar, not a fork, not even a stick of gum." He let out a short, sharp breath through his nose. "I believe you." Delilah didn't nod, didn't say thank you. Just let the truth hang in the air where it belonged. Gregory glanced toward the back window. The sun was climbing high, throwing long beams of light across the kitchen floor. He remembered something his father once told him back when he was young and still sharp around the edges. Real integrity ain't loud. It doesn't wear a name tag. You got to be still enough to see it. Gregory hadn't been still in a long time. He sat down at the kitchen table slowly, like he was carrying weight in his chest. "I didn't used to be this kind of man," he said almost to himself. Delilah raised an eyebrow, but stayed quiet. I used to trust people. Didn't need cameras, didn't need tricks. But somewhere along the way, the money got louder than my gut." She leaned against the counter, folding her arms, listening. "I've had people steal," he continued. "An old assistant took my Amex for 2 months before I caught it. A cousin used my name to pull a loan. Another guy took an entire crate of wine from my cellar and sold it. All people I gave too much to. That's tough," Delilah said. He nodded. "It is, but it still wasn't your fault." "No," she replied, "but it made me look guilty by default. That was it. The line that cut right through him. He'd never said it out loud, never even let the full thought form in his head. But she was right. Somewhere in him he'd let bias take the wheel. Not hatred, not malice, just assumption. Suspicion passed down, whispered in closed rooms, disguised as advice. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. Delilah blinked slowly. "You do?" That surprised him. She didn't say it's okay, didn't wave it off, just gave him space to do what was right. "I'm sorry," Gregory said, looking up at her. "I should have never doubted you." She gave a small nod. "Appreciate you saying that." Gregory sat with that for a minute. Then softly he asked, "Why didn't you just quit?" Delilah tilted her head. "Because I didn't take the job for your approval." That silenced him. "I took it 'cause it paid fair. Hours were steady. And I don't walk away just because folks disappoint me. If I did that, I'd never keep a J." Her tone wasn't bitter, just honest, warned from experience. Gregory ran a hand over his face. He saw her differently now, not as the help, not as a person who cleaned around his success, but as someone who had likely carried heavier loads than he ever had, in quieter rooms with no one watching. "Would it be weird if I gave you a raise?" he asked, trying to cut the tension with a half smile. She chuckled. "Not weird, just late." They both laughed. Not long, not loud, but it was real. And for the first time that morning, Gregory felt like a man again. Not a suspecting boss, not a tester runner. Just a man who got something deeply, painfully right after getting it wrong. But the next day, he'd do something that Delilah never saw coming. The next morning, Delilah showed up at 7 a.m. sharp, like she always did. The gate code worked the same. The front door was unlocked, just like it had been every Monday for years. But something was different. There was a note taped to the inside of the front door. "Come to the patio. Coffee's ready." Delilah blinked, unsure for a second if she was walking into a conversation or a situation. She sat down her bag and followed the sound of a breeze and soft jazz floating in from the back. Gregory sat at the outdoor table, a navy blue robe over a white tee, slippers on his feet. 2 mugs of coffee steamed between them. Next to her cup was a folded envelope with her name on it. "Morning," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Hope you don't mind. Figured we'd start today a little different." Delilah slid into the seat, weary but composed. "You okay?" "I am now," Gregory said. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since yesterday." She didn't respond. ND just waited. He took a sip of coffee, then exhaled slowly. Delilah, I disrespected you. The words came clean. No sugar, no fluff. I didn't say it yesterday, but it needs repeating. I tested you. I let people who don't even know you plant seeds in my head. I trusted whispers over 6 years of proof. He leaned back. And that's not just wrong, it's weak. Delilah raised an eyebrow. You said it. I didn't. He smirked at that, nodding. Fair enough. There was a long pause. Birds chirped somewhere off in the hedge. The patio heater hummed quietly. I didn't expect a note, he admitted. I expected you to ignore it or confront me. Or hell, maybe just walk out and never come back. But you did the one thing I didn't see coming. You handled it with grace, quiet dignity. Like it didn't even rattle you. Delilah looked down into her coffee. It did rattle me, she said. But I've been rattled before. That doesn't mean I break. Gregory nodded slowly. I wish I had your strength. Delilah looked at him, really looked at him, and saw for the first time in a while a man who wasn't guarded, not polished, not rich, just human. I'm trying, he added. She softened. Trying is a good place to start. He reached over, slid the envelope toward her. I know you're not in it for this, he said. But this is a bonus, not for being honest. You don't get rewarded for what's already right. This is for staying, even when I made you feel small. Delilah hesitated, then opened the envelope. It wasn't cash. It was a check. A year's salary paid up front. She blinked. Gregory, no strings, he said. Use it however you want. Take time off. Fix your car. Hell, leave and never come back if you want to. I just wanted to make it right as much as I can. Delilah stared at the check for a moment before folding it carefully and tucking it into her bag. She didn't make a big show of it. Thank you, she said. He cleared his throat, eyes wet, but refusing to drop tears. You ever think about quitting? He asked. Twice, she said honestly. Once when Carla told me I should smile more, and once when I caught one of your old friends looking through my purse in the laundry room. Gregory blinked. You never told me that. She shrugged. Didn't want to make it messy. He left 5 minutes later anyway. Gregory leaned back in his chair, stunned. Why'd you stay? Delilah looked at him. Because I knew who I was. I was just waiting to see if you'd figure out who you were. He didn't respond. He couldn't. His voice had left him. They sat there in silence for a while, but it wasn't heavy. It was clean, like the end of a storm. Delilah stood. I'll go start on the den. You don't have to work today, he said quickly. Take the day. She smiled. I know, but I want to. She walked back inside. Same calm step, same steady presence. Gregory stayed out on the patio, the untouched coffee cooling in front of him. He didn't need cameras anymore. He needed character, and it had been living under his roof the whole time. 2 weeks later, the cameras were gone. Not just the one in the hallway. All of them. Gregory had the whole surveillance system dismantled and professionally removed. Delilah didn't ask why, but when she walked past the blank wall where the little black lens used to sit, she noticed. And for the first time since she'd started working there, she smiled when he wasn't looking. Something had shifted. Gregory had changed. And OT overnight, not like in some movie, but in the quiet, consistent ways that actually matter. He started greeting her in the morning with more than just a nod. He asked if she needed anything before the weekend. He even stopped making casual comments to friends about having someone keep the house in order. He started calling her by her full name. Delilah Moore runs this place better than I do, he said once, half laughing while showing a friend around. If she ever leaves me, I'll have to sell the whole house. She heard him from the hallway and paused for a moment. Not because she needed the compliment, but because she knew it was real. It wasn't performative. It wasn't public relations. It was just honest. Gregory had stopped proving things to other people. Now he was just trying to be better for himself. One afternoon, Gregory's younger nephew came over to visit. A college senior with too much cologne and a mouth that didn't know how to slow down. While Gregory was upstairs, the kid wandered into the kitchen where Delilah was slicing peaches. He leaned against the counter. You really been working here 6 years? He asked like it was some sort of surprise. 7 next month, she said, not looking up. And you like it? I do. He tilted his head. You ever think about doing more? Like, I don't know, managing a crew or working in hotels or something? Delilah finally looked up. More according to who? He shrugged, suddenly quiet. Don't mistake quiet work for small work, she added. He left the kitchen a little humbled. Later, Gregory asked her what they'd talked about. She gave him the short version and he chuckled. I hope he listens. That boy's going to learn his lessons the hard way. Delilah smirked. Most of us do. Time moved on. Nothing dramatic happened after that, but the tone of the house changed. It was warmer, lighter. Gregory began hosting fewer dinners with the men who made sideways comments. He kept to a smaller circle, started mentoring young business owners in Oak Cliff, and even attended a local panel about racial equity and hiring practices. He didn't speak on stage. He just sat and listened. A few months later, he asked Delilah if she'd help him create a scholarship fund in her name. She refused at first, said it wasn't necessary. I'm just doing my job, she told him. I know, Gregory said, and that's exactly why it should have your name on it. She agreed. The More Standard Fund was launched quietly to support single mothers returning to the workforce. Delilah didn't attend the ceremony. She had work that day, but when Gregory gave a short speech, he said this. Some people show you who they are in loud, flashy ways. Others do it quietly day after day, until you realize they're the kind of person you should have noticed all along. Sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from the boardroom or the books or the ones with the biggest voices. They come from the people who just show up, the ones who don't need attention to be great. Gregory had to learn that the hard way. And Delilah, she just kept showing up. Not for praise, not for a paycheck, but because doing right never needed an audience. If this story made you feel something, anything, then maybe it's time to look at who you trust. And more importantly, why not everyone who looks like you is your friend, and not everyone who serves you is beneath you. Watch the quiet ones. They might be carrying more honor than the ones at the head of the table. Take a second to share this with someone who still judges people by their paycheck or their position, because character isn't about what you say when everyone's watching. It's about what you do when no one